You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today, Sharad Mehta. Welcome, Sharad.
Hey, thank you, Jim, for having me on the podcast.
You're welcome. And I'm really excited for you to be on, Sharad. And I've got lots of questions. I love what you're doing and how you're helping people in the real estate investment space. But before I dive in with some questions, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you've been up to.
Cool. My name is Sharad Mehta. I am father, husband, son, and live in Carlsbad, California, right outside of San Diego, about 45 minutes north of downtown San Diego. And as far as work is concerned, I flip houses, I own rental properties, I own a property management company, and I am also the owner and founder of ReSimpli, which is a real estate software company for investors.
And that's one of the things we want to talk about today. And Sharad, I got to tell you that I tell people, if you had I grew up in California. I grew up in Inglewood. I don't know if you know where that is or not, but I always tell people, if you had all the money in the world and you didn't have to leave when you didn't want to leave, as far as traffic wise or anything else, being on the cliffs in Carlsbad is about as good as it gets. So that Ritz, the Ritz there in Carlsbad, I've been there a few times, and it's one of my favorite places. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I am absolutely grateful, blessed. Every day I pinch myself. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the country, if not in the world. And beautiful weather. I'm looking out my window, not even one single cloud out there. Yeah. It's like blue sky. Yeah, I'm absolutely blessed to be living where I live.
I tell people I live in Southwest Florida, so we get the sunset every night too. But I tell people our sunsets are beautiful. And I love going to the sunset. There's something about the day ending and just kind of, you completing the day and you're grateful. I always try to have 3 things that I'm grateful for at the end of the day. But the sunsets over the Pacific Ocean, especially where you're at, they're pretty special. I think they're better than Florida.
They are.
Excuse me.
They are, yeah. No, it's absolutely amazing.
All right. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get into real estate? And how did you start? Just kind of tell me the story.
Yeah. So how did I get into real estate? I used to be an accountant. I was working for one of the biggest accounting firms in the country. I loved the company that I was working for. I loved the people that I was working with. I just didn't like what I was doing. And I really just wanted some freedom of time and money. I wanted to be able to do what I want to do, when I want to do, who I want to do it with. So it kind of started with, okay, what could I do that will just make me happy? At one point, I wanted to be a full-time poker player and realized that I absolutely suck at it. I'm just horrible at poker. And then I started looking at investing in stocks and bonds, like doing day trading, that sort of thing. And I just didn't have the patience. I was just way too, the market was going up and down. I didn't have the personality to do that. It was just driving me crazy. Because I was an accountant, I've always been into personal finance. So I would read a lot of blogs, books. And in one of the blogs that I was reading, in the comment section, someone had mentioned a book. The book was called Flip. I even forgot the author. So I went to that. And then from there, how Amazon has suggestions for similar products. And there was a book called Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And there was something about the title. I'm like, yeah, I want to be a millionaire. Real estate, it's something that's relatable. It's an easy, relatable asset. So I bought that book. I read the Flip, and then I read Real Estate Millionaire Real Estate Investor. So there's something about millionaire real estate investor, like how the book talked about, growing your properties, passive income. Just it seemed very relatable to me. And coming from India, I think just real estate as one asset people have always been very gravitated towards. So I started doing that. Bought my first property in August 2010. Bought my second property in September 2010. And this was Just I happened to be living in Chicago at that time, buying properties in Indiana. Absolutely amazing time. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So my wife and I talked, and I decided to just leave my job a couple of months after that. So March 2011, I left my job to just pursue real estate full time. It just seemed like there was an absolutely amazing opportunity. If I did not take advantage of that opportunity when it was there, I'm going to regret for the rest of my life.
Wow, that's awesome. And I love when people have what most people would consider, a great job, right? Like one of our partners here at Create Tailwind, and my co-host on this show, Nick Costco, he was a pilot in Louisville, Kentucky for UPS. And if you polled all the people in Kentucky, hey, if you had that job, what would you think? 99% of them would be like, oh my gosh, that's a great job. 99% of the people in the world would be like, oh, you're an accountant. Wow, what a cool, great job. Like, you're so blessed. But what people don't realize is, and I know you get this, is that then you're just really a well-paid slave, right? I mean, like, I love what you said. I want to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, with whom I want to do it with. And I want to be, to me, that means freedom, right? Yep. Money gives you choices, choices give you freedom. But if we only exchange our time for money, we can never be truly free, because somebody, even if it's our business and not some other person, they're going to tell us when we need to be, where we need to be, when we need to be there. So talk about, like, did you grow up with that mentality? Did your parents instill that on you? Where did you learn that, like, to want that freedom, or was it just something inside of you?
I think it was probably my dad. He didn't ever like sit down with me and talk to me about it, but just he never had a job. Like, he went to school in India, and he was a chartered accountant, which is equivalent of a CPA, but he always had his business. So just kind of, growing up watching him, the lifestyle that he had, just being independent with his, I mean, he was working very hard, but just not going to an office, reporting to someone. I just like that idea of being independent, of, not having someone that I was reported to. Again, I mean, the people that I was working with, absolutely amazing people, but it was just not in my personality, not in my DNA to have that structure around my schedule, where I had to show up at a certain time. I had to stay there until a certain hour. You could not, it was a big company, so there were certain systems and processes that they had, and it was very hard to make a change. You could not influence certain things. And it was from there that I thought. And then another thing was, it's like, when you have a job, if you're working 40 hours a week, let's say you get paid 100,000, right? Just for this example. If you work 80 hours a week, it's not like you're getting paid 200,000, right? You may get a little bit overtime, but for the most part, if you're a salaried employee, you work 40 hours, you work 80 hours, you're not getting paid extra for the most part. Yes, you get your increments or bonuses every year, but the amount of effort that you put in, you're not proportionally getting the value out of it. And it just didn't sit well with me. So I wanted something where the amount of effort that I was putting in was, I was getting the return in proportion to that. So there were like those few factors that led me to just start looking at other things, just where I could just be, get up every morning, be excited about what I was doing, and I could see the return in all the effort that I was putting in, and have passive income. I think having passive income was a big part of that. I don't remember like ever growing up, thinking about that, but just once I had a job, I think that's when I started thinking about, maybe it was the time, this was like 2008, 9, when I started thinking about it. It's like the financial crisis with the housing market. So that made me, I think it was the circumstances that made me think more about it. Okay, what if I lose my job? I don't want to be just dependent on my job. Maybe it was a different time where the economy was just booming. Maybe I would have thought differently about the situation. But I think it was just the circumstances that I was in, kind of seeing everything that was going around me, people getting laid off. I think that had an influence on my choice to look at other things where I could be financially independent, where I was not relying on a job. And also the fact that the financial crisis happened because people were over leveraged had a big influence on how I started investing. I own about 60 plus unit, and 55 or 56 of them are paid for free and clear.
Wow.
And very conservative, but it was just the product of the circumstances or the environment that I was in when I started investing.
So, I always think it's interesting. I like what you said, a couple of, as far as timing and where you were and all that. And so sometimes when people hear that, they go, well, I'm not living in that time today, right? Or maybe not that place today. And so then what we do is we get this negative talk to ourselves. Well, I just can't do. I mean, that's cool for Sharad, but I can't do what he did because, like the timing's not right or this isn't right. And obviously that's a false way to look at it, because right now you can be learning everything that you could learn about real estate. Right now you could be educating yourself. If it isn't the right time to make a move, then it might not be the right time to make a move. But I would argue that if you're going to do multifamily and the market is down 20 or 30% from the peak, let's say 2022, and you could get a loan that at 3% or less that you could assume, well, then guess what? It's a great time to get into real estate, right? And so but it doesn't mean that you have to start at the right time. You just have to start doing something and then be ready. You could start raising money or raising a pool of investors or researching a market. So, would you agree with that? I mean, do you get that from people? They're like, hey, this just isn't the right time.
Oh yeah, you get it all the time. I think it helps people stay in their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
When you do something new, it's outside of your comfort zone. And people like being in their comfort zone. People like doing things that they're familiar with. Like not taking action is what their comfort zone is. It's familiar to them. Going out, whether it's residential, commercial property, or multifamily, it's something you have to do that you're not familiar with, something that you have to do that you're not comfortable with. So your mind, your brain, your body is just going to default go to, hey, let's not do that. It's not within our comfort zone. But all the success that you're going to get in your life, whether it's personal, business, it's on the other side of your comfort zone, right? If someone weighs 300 pounds and they want to get to 200 pounds, it's in their comfort zone to just not do anything, just sit at home, right? Again, I'm making just generally speaking.
Yeah.
It's just in their comfort zone to sit at home, not go out for a walk, not work out, not eat healthy, because it's easier to go to a McDonald's drive-through and get a Big Mac, with fries and whatnot. But going to a gym, being vulnerable, showing up and taking responsibility, eating healthy, that's outside of the comfort zone. And you have to win the battle in your mind and against your body to do that. And once you do that, you just have to be disciplined to do that day in, day out, and almost like forget about the goal. I think that's the tough part, is people make excuses because the excuses help them stay in the comfort zone. But I heard this somewhere, but the pain of staying your present reality has to be bigger than the pain of going to your future. I was reading a book or I heard it in a podcast, and that's so true. And you have to have this, be so uncomfortable with your present reality that you're willing to be okay with the discomfort of going to your new future self. Only then you're going to take action. And then once you decide that, just commit to it day in, day out, do those things that are going to get you to your goal.
Yeah, it's new patterns. I mean, I think this is what you're talking about, Sharad. And when I go to the gym, I always am impressed with the person that walks into the gym that, like you said, is 300 pounds. And I really root for them, because I think It takes a lot of guts to walk into a gym when you're 300 pounds, or go for a walk or go for a jog or whatever they're doing. And I like when I drive by somebody like that, I'm rooting for them. I'm praying that they make it, that they stay committed and they change their pattern. But you're right, because we all want comfort and pleasure. And if we get comfort and pleasure from a Big Mac and French fries, it's much easier to do that than to say, oh my gosh, it's going to take me a year at least to lose 100 pounds. Right? If I do it right, I'm going to lose 1 or 2 pounds a week. I'm going to try to put on muscle. I'm going to get healthier and healthier and healthier. It's a journey. It's a long thing. But like you said, I use that analogy of working out and building muscle and losing fat and getting into shape and improving your health, just like I do in business. So it's the same way. Don't you think it's the same way when people want to get into real estate, because they're like, hey, I don't really know what sector of real estate I'd get into. I don't think the timing's right. I can just make those excuses, and that comfort, it comes to me like that. Hey, it's not me, it's the circumstances. Yeah. Right? I'm not taking accountability. I mean, what would you say to somebody that's sitting there and saying, well, I don't even know what to do, Sharad. I mean, I don't even know what the first step is.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, let's say if you're confused between, should I do residential? Should I do commercial? Right? I would say read a book on commercial investing and a book on residential. Like, oh my God, it's 300 pages. Just read a page of each book, right? Yeah. And imagine, once you pick up a book, you're not just going to read a page. Like even if you read a page, imagine you'll be done with that book, one book in a year, okay? Yeah. So imagine at the end of the year, you'll have this knowledge about commercial or residential. And there's so many amazing podcasts out there, like Jim, yours. If you're driving to work, right? If you're walking your dog, if you go out for a walk, if you're just, people take their phone to the bathroom, right?
Right. Yeah.
Instead of scrolling on Instagram, YouTube, whatever that might be, listen to that podcast, right? You just have to have that one, flash of inspiration. Just take the next action. You don't have to think about, again, like going back to the example of losing weight, you start 300 pounds at the beginning of the year. You're not thinking about going to 200 pounds the next day. That's not possible. Just like that. If you are starting as an investor, don't think about, hey, the buddy of mine has 500 units. How do I get it? No, just start with 1 unit. Think about how do you get your 1 unit. Right. And for that, think about, okay, what do you need to do? You need to get knowledge, listen to a podcast, read a book. You can get, even if you spent like 15 minutes of your day listening to a podcast, right? Imagine how much knowledge you would have. When you think about 15 minutes, you have 1,440 minutes in a day, right? Mm. And then 15 minutes is just like 1% of your day. Imagine if you just spend 1% of your day in improving yourself, what an impact it will have on your life. And if you did that day in, day out, imagine how much knowledge you would have from that 1%. Like that 1% of your day would have the biggest impact. Like that's the biggest lever you can pull in your life. And you did that, then it's just about gaining confidence. There's so many amazing, in this day and age that we live in, there's so many amazing opportunities to network with people. People are more than happy to share kind of what's working for them. Like go to YouTube, Google, listen to podcasts. There's so many opportunities where you could just gain the knowledge and the wisdom that you need from people that have already made mistakes. We live in this amazing era of where you don't have to make your own mistakes to learn from. You can just go and learn from other people's mistakes. Like when could you do that like 20, 30 years ago? Like you could do that. People are talking about the mistakes they're making, things that are working. And the things that are working, if someone else has done it, like there's no reason or excuse that why you cannot do it if you want it bad enough. It's just the question, do you want it bad enough? Like, are you willing to go out of your comfort zone to take that leap? If you are, then there's every resource out there available for you to make it happen.
Yeah, you talk a lot, just in your story and stuff, it's like personal accountability. And so what people do is sometimes they don't let themselves dream. Like if you were 300 pounds, you don't visualize what you'd look like, feel like, everything about you at 200 pounds. You just don't let yourself feel like that. So what you really have to do is you have to be kind of like childlike and fantasize about what you want to be, what you want to have. And it's not a fantasy, okay, but you're visualizing. And I love what you said about, there, you can go on YouTube or you can go on Instagram, you can go and you can see all these people that are teaching you something, and it's all free, right? Yeah, they might be selling a course, but you get to try them out first, right?
Yeah.
They might be selling a system, but you get to see, like, do I connect with this person? Do I believe this person? Do I feel like this person is an expert? Are they doing what I want to do? Do I want to be them 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? And I think you're right. We live in an incredible time that you can do that. I mean, when I was in my 20s, it wasn't that way. I was buying cassette tapes and listening to cassette tapes and listening to all this stuff. And I was like, well, this person sells real estate. Don't want to be a real estate agent, but and I would then I would have to relate it to something else. And I'd have to read book after book after book. And so now we live in this area and there's so many tools. And I want to pivot and talk about your CRM for real estate investors, because again, I think you have this unique background of this accounting. And I think there's so many people out there that they go, well, I don't know how to, I don't know what I would do. And so talk about your CRM and how it works and how real estate investors benefit from it.
Yeah, so I started the CRM when I moved from Chicago to Carlsbad, where I live now, back in August 2015. I didn't start the company in 2015. I think it started in 2017. But I started looking at the systems and processes that I would need in my business. Now that I'm managing my house flipping business from like 4-hour flight away, right? I'm living in San Diego area. My business is right outside of Chicago. So it's not something I can just go visit my properties every day or every weekend or not even once a month. So then I started looking at my business and I looked at the software options that were out there. I didn't find anything that like I got really excited about. There were 3 things that were very important to me. It had to be an all-in-one software where everyone on my team could be on one software. It had to be super simple to use, and it had to give me really good KPIs and data about my business coming from accounting background. So those were the 3 criteria that I had, and I didn't find anything that was out there. So again, like just kind of talking about what I was talking earlier, I just hired a developer to create something super, super simple for me. I didn't think about, yes, I had a vision of what I wanted to create, but I didn't get up every morning and think about, oh my God, like there's so much work to do. Like it was just about, okay, what's the next step do I need to take? Right. So it was about, okay, let's just hire a developer, just have him work on this next thing that I need done. So at this point, I mean, it's a CRM for real estate investor. It's an more than CRM, all-in-one software for real estate investors that helps them with managing the data, marketing data that they have in their business, manage the leads that they have, manage the operation side, the sales side. It replaces your phone system, your texting system, email, and even your bookkeeping and accounting. You can create websites. You can like anything you can imagine that you would need to do in a real estate business. You can do that with ReSimpli. But again, it all started out with this vision, but it was about being disciplined day in day out, or what needed to be done.
So can you analyze a deal in the beginning, like to see if this is a good deal or not a good deal?
Yeah, I mean, we have a calculator built in that you can use. It's built for people that are doing direct to seller marketing. If you're an investor that's buying houses that are listed on MLS and renting them out, it's not built for that. It's built for people that are doing direct to seller marketing, whatever that marketing might be, direct mail, cold calling, PPC, TV, radio. It's built for those investors that need to buy direct to seller, that are doing direct to seller marketing and buying off market properties. It's built for that type of investor.
So like, let me ask you a question. So like one thing that I find, because I'm this person, like somebody that doesn't go away, like somebody's trying to sell something to me or get me to buy something, right? It could be something simple, but it's all in the follow-up for me. It's like the person that doesn't go away, then I think, gosh, I keep seeing this person's name. they're trying to sell me a Jeep. You know what? And I bought a Jeep because I have a BMW, but I wanted to be able to take my jet ski to the boat ramp. And so I bought a Jeep, but I bought it from the person that just never stopped following up.
Oh yeah.
And so does it help with that? Because I don't think as humans, sometimes we're not good at follow up.
Yeah, 100%. That I would say the most loved feature in ReSimpli is the follow-up sequence that we have. And in fact, like I just closed on a deal about a month ago where we were following up with the seller for a year. Okay.
Yeah.
We bought the house for about 90,000. We're going to put about 5,000. I was just talking to my project manager and she went and actually looked at, she lives in California. She went and looked at the property over the weekend and she said, Sharad, it's a beautiful property. It's actually a 6-unit instead of 4-unit that we thought. And we can sell it for about 180, 190 without doing anything. It's worth about 300, 350, but if you put money into it, but imagine, so we're going to make about 80, 90,000 from the follow-up.
Wow.
We weren't doing anything fancy. It was just about follow-up. Like you mentioned, nothing that was like a secret sauce, right? It was just about staying on top of the seller's mind. Like we were calling them 1 month, we were following up through text or email a month later. Just whenever the situation changed, they thought of us and they said, hey, we're ready to sell our house. And that was it.
So I love that. How do people find you, Sharad? How do they find your system and learn more about it?
Yeah, so they can go to ReSimpli.com, ReSimpli.com. And if they have something that they want to connect with me about, they can go to Sharad at ReSimpli.com, SHARAD at ReSimpli.com.
Here's the thing that I see, Sharad, is that, when I come on here and I talk to people that really are doing it, right? I sometimes interview people and I go, I wonder if they're doing it or not. But when I interview somebody like you and I know you're doing it, you've done it, you've learned all the lessons, you've probably had mentors and people help you along the way and you want to help other people and you've developed something that's unique in the marketplace, there's patterns. Like all the stuff that we're talking about, like you're coming from a different perspective than me, but there's consistency because success leaves clues, it leaves patterns, and there's certain things that you do. And it's like the follow-up. If you think you're going to get started in real estate and you're going to take out a notepad and you're going to start keeping track of the people, I'm telling you, you're going to have a hard time. I know that I'm not organized in my brain enough to do that. But if I have something that says, here are your follow-ups for the month, or better yet, it's sending out emails, it's doing, and I sometimes hire VAs to do all this stuff for me to where I don't even have to do it. If they had your system and the VA, which, you got to know what you're good at, what you're not good at. And I know what I'm not good at. And so I always say, I don't say this, but I believe Dan Sullivan wrote a book called Who Not How. So find the who's that are good at the stuff that you're not good at, right? Not you learn how to do that. So, so thinking of advice and thinking of things that you've learned along the way, Sharad, what's the best advice anybody's ever given you?
I think it's be consistent.
I love it.
Be consistent. I think that's what I've done in my life is just be consistent, do the boring things day in, day out. There's no secret. If you want to lose weight, be consistent, go to gym, eat healthy. If you want to be successful in business, make calls, send marketing, and be consistent with it.
Yeah, you know what? I love that you use. You don't look like you've ever been overweight, but I love that you use that analogy because, I can tell you, I've been heavier than I am now, and when I wasn't being honest with, how many calories am I bringing in? Well, I actually, I worked out. It's not. I was telling myself I wasn't taking personal accountability of really what was happening, and as soon as I said, hey, I'm going to figure out 200 grams of protein a day. I'm going to figure out 100 grams of carbs or less and keep it simple for me. And I'm not buying any of that food that is junk and it's not going to do me any good. And I'm going to think about what I really want to look like in my late 50s. Then I started getting results. And then it was a journey. So I love that you use that analogy. All right, last question. If God came down from heaven and only allowed you to retain the knowledge that you've received from one book, Sharad, what would that book be?
Marcus Aurelius, The Meditations.
I love it. Love it. Talk about it. For people that aren't familiar.
Yeah, it's a book on Stoicism. It has all the knowledge, all the wisdom that you need to make any decision in the world. And it's the best book ever written, in my opinion. If it's helped me a lot in my life, there's still a lot of things that I struggle with, but I feel like I keep going to that philosophy in life that Marcus Aurelius wrote about in that book. So like one of the things that he talks about is, don't worry about the things that are outside of your control. Right? There's nothing you can do about it, so why worry about it? If there's something you can do about it, then just do it. Why worry about it? Just such a simple thing. But when you think about it, if there's something going on, again, like going back to the example of weight loss, right? Can you do something about that? Yes, then do it. Why? What are you complaining about? What are you worried about? If there's nothing you can do about it, then stop worrying about it. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Just go on with your life. If there's something you can do it. If not, then don't worry about it. And there's like so many other like amazing nuggets in that book, like full of wisdom. That's the only book I feel like I would need.
I love, and I think you're right. And you know what? I don't think that I've ever had anybody say that book when I've asked that question. But you know what I really like is I think you could take certain parts of that book and you could trace other books that are newer personal development books back to that as the core. I think you could do that with the Bible, by the way, too. But in this book, I think it reminds me of this book, and maybe you've heard of this book or not. And I think anybody with children should read this book, especially when they get to a certain age. But it's called, I might butcher the title. It's it's J.D. Rockefeller, 38 Letters to My Son. So this is J.D. Rockefeller, the richest man in the world, okay, writing letters to his son, giving him advice, right? And there's actually, here's the secret. I always ask people, well, how many letters are there? Because if you've read it, then you know there's 40. There's 2 bonus letters at the end, so there's not 38. So that's why I find if somebody got to the end of the book. But there's little advices, like he says, I used to be a slave to the banks, but now I am the bank. And why I'm fascinated with J.D. Rockefeller is I grew up in Inglewood, California, like as I told you before we started recording. And so I grew up very poor. I can imagine that again, I don't know really anything about India, but I think that there's probably a lot of poor people and a few really rich people, right? Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. It's different now. There's a good middle class, but yeah.
Is there? Okay. Yeah. I probably, I'd be, if I told you like my knowledge, where my knowledge has come from, like, Slumdog Millionaire. I related to that because I'm not saying like the poor there. I'm not relating that.
The poor there are very poor, but yeah, you're right. Like what they showed in Slumdog Millionaire, like to some extent, a lot of that happened.
So J.D. Rockefeller, he grew up very poor. And when he was super poor, his vision was that he'd be the richest man in the world. Now, I grew up poor. I never thought that big. I never dreamed that big. And so I'm impressed, super impressed, that he became the richest man in the world because, like you talked about, you have to, like, he took accountability. He didn't say, oh, I'm poor. I'm always going to be poor. I just never have any opportunity. We live in the United States. As screwed up as this country is, it's still, you have opportunity. And a lot of places you don't have opportunity, and you got to take that opportunity. It's up to you. The only person that's going to help you is you looking in the mirror. People are going to help you, but you got to take personal accountability. Whether you're losing 100 pounds like you talked about, and I love that analogy, or you're building a real estate portfolio. And one of the ways that you do it is most of us are not good at books. At the books, most of us are not good at the accounting or follow-up or all of that. So I encourage everybody listening to go to ReSimpli.com and check it out and watch some YouTube videos. I'm sure there's stuff that you've got on there, and just like see, hey, maybe this is the one thing. If I have this, then I feel like I can do the next step. Sharad, thank you so much for being on and sharing your journey and wisdom, and I really appreciate it. And thank you so much. So,
thank you, Jim, for having me. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. And audience, we're going to wrap this up like we always do, and it falls right in line with what Sharad and I have been talking about. And it's The Strangest Secret with Earl Nightingale and his incredible words. Take it away, Earl.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.